Hello, and welcome back to the Projector Stories Podcast. I'm Sarah. I am a 1-3 emotional projector.
I'm Lora. I'm a 5-1 spotted projector.
And in this podcast, we basically just riff on what's been going on with us within our deconditioning journey. Me and Lora both have the 1156 channel, which is an abstract channel from the throat to the ajna. And it's a storytelling channel, so there's quite a bit of that. And we also have right minds, so we never really know what is going to get pulled out from our brains. But if you're correct for us, then it'll be fun to listen along. Hey, Lora.
Hi, Sarah.
How's it going?
It's going. It's always going. We're in constant movement. It's always going. How are you going?
I'm good. I know I usually ask you immediately if there's anything been new for you within the kind of, mental, physical, material reality that you are perceiving. But, I know you were running around today, so I just wanted to see how you were.
Well, it's funny because we were going to record earlier and then my got shifted around. And like earlier today, I was so excited to record. And my energy is just like my sacral is used up. So we'll see how it goes. But what I wanted to start off saying with was last episode, we talked a little bit about Neptune being in 25 now. And I touched on how when I started deconditioning, Neptune was in 22, which gave me the channel of openness, 1222. And I didn't say how that impacted me personally as a non-emotional person. And today, this week we have Mars in 22. So we have the 1222, Sarah. There's one thing. But I was emotional in the sense that I would really feel the emotional plateau of like nothingness. And then there would be days where for no logical reason I would feel very melancholic and depressed. And then days for no logical reason where I would be so happy. And I miss those days because I'm not generally a happy person. Despite always laughing when I communicate, like I don't have that frequency in me. And this morning I was happy and I was like, oh no, duh, it's 1222. I could feel the spike of the emotional wave go up. And it has since crashed. Like that spike is no longer there. But I just wanted to touch on that of just like the magic of frequency, how if you're not emotional like me, you're not necessarily a happy person or have a lot of emotions moving through you in general. And it's really interesting to see how the different emotional waves play a role in being non-emotional. And yeah, like I had that very long period of having 1222 temporarily. And there are very clear ramifications of that channel. And here today, I am witnessing one as such of being happy. Well, no longer being happy, but having had been happy is that grammatically correct this morning. So it was nice. I enjoyed it, and I'm sad that it's already gone, but it was a very nice little moment. My dog is currently asking to enter my bedroom. Hold on. Lyra, no. Sorry.
No, Lyra. No, it's funny because I was watching John Martin, who has since passed, but he was one of the kind of OG human design guys. I don't know if he was like first generation or I don't know exactly, but I just know that he was at it for a while, teaching human design, and he was a splenic projector, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that if you ever watch his videos, you'll always notice is he has this it's like a hairpin trigger laugh. Like he will laugh at everything.
That's how I am. Like I resonate with him on that level of being splenic and just laughing at the things that we say. It's not funny, but I can't not laugh.
No, it's almost like a nervous laugh, but like I don't necessarily think that he's nervous, and I don't necessarily think that you're nervous. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's just like one of the things that I can't remember who said it, but maybe it was in the Living Your Design, one of the first classes I took. Maybe it was Phil, who said that like splenic people, like they have this like smile on their face, like laughing because, you know, they're trying to like preemptively stop any emotional people from thinking that, you know, it's like trying to like tiptoe around the wave and just be like, I'm happy, you don't have to worry about me, like almost as a preemptive strike against like emotional meltdowns or emotional extremes, or people lashing out that are emotional, right, for non-emotionals. So I wouldn't expect it just to be people who are splenic, but like, you know, I do notice that there's kind of a quality of like, don't, like, I'm not, basically it's like, I'm not a threat, I'm just here to laugh, do not hurt me with your extreme emotionality kind of energy sometimes with people who are undefined in that way. I don't know if you've noticed that in yourself or not, but I never thought that you were like quote unquote a happy person. And I wouldn't consider myself one either, but I would say that I'm an excitable person. And when there are, you know, my wave spikes, which, like, to be totally frank, it doesn't happen that often, but when it happens, it's like I have to jump around my house to like deal with the energy. I'm like bouncing, but like it happens like maybe, you know, 4 times max, like a month. Sometimes it won't happen for 6 months at a time. Especially like if I've been kind of stuck in a low wave. So I relate to the feeling of that like excited feeling of just like no reason, but it's like a squeak, like it's like the top of a squeak. It's like eek, like you're just like excited and you don't know why. So I'm glad you were able to experience that with emotional definition. And it doesn't seem like you have a huge crash, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know how it works with transits for non-emotional people.
Well, it went back to it's a spike because its individual circuitry kind of just disappeared and went back into the neutral plateau of the 1222, which is fine. I mean, it's better than it crashing to the opposite direction and being pessimistic and just antisocial and whatever else, depressive, melancholic. So, I mean, it's fine. It's just neutral now, back to normal territory.
Well, I thought with the individual channel with the spike that it goes up down, it's like a spike and then a crash and then back to normal. I mean, my friend Steffi actually has a 3955, so I could probably ask her. I don't know that I've seen it go from great to bad. I don't really know that, you know, individual circuitry is funny because it doesn't necessarily have the same kind of insane emotional energetic that the collective or the ratcheting tribal does. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that how the transit is happening.
Yeah, well, my just personal experience of it when Neptune was there would not be like immediately up down. It would be random days it was up, random days it was down. They didn't have to go hand in hand. But maybe for other people it is like that. I don't know. That was just my experience of it.
Yeah, I certainly don't know. And I know that for me, because like my spike is so intense, it's like the crash doesn't happen immediately, but usually the crash happens around the topic that is causing the spike, you know? So it's like whatever was happening to me that created the chemistry that's creating the spike in my system, it's like that same topic, subject, you know, person, whatever it is the same thing that then will create the down crash later. So, you know, it's like looking at the same thing from different perspectives is a very, you know, it's what gives emotional people their profundity. So it's like that for me is how it works. But, you know, it's crazy to think about the transits and like and you, I feel like, are a really good example of someone who is like hypersensitive to it. So it's like a good person to like see how these types of things affect you, to like get a pulse on how it might work for other non-emotional people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and but the 12/22, like the thing that happened to me this week, and I don't know, I never really know. There was a few different things that have happened. One, and I think I told you this, like I've been having, I don't want to say like health issues, but I guess that's what it is. And it has to do with GI stuff, which I've talked on the podcast about, and then it's also had to do with my hair has been shedding. And so between those two things, I'm like trying everything but the kitchen sink to like make myself feel better or, be better generally. And finally, I went and got acupuncture, which I think I shared on the podcast. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. But I went and got acupuncture and I got something for my liver because apparently I have liver qi stagnation based on the state of my tongue. And then also I started taking sulfur, and between those two things, I feel physically so much better. It's like almost spooky. And I don't know if that's because, like we discussed on the last podcast, Pluto just went into the 41, right? Like Pluto coming in to transform the 41, which is where my natal Saturn is. Or if it is that, like Laura was just talking about, like this manifestation energy where I'm actually connected to the throat and can actually like kind of cohesively understand what's going on with my physicality in a collective holistic way, instead of just like feeling like something's wrong and my mind's like trying to figure it out, but the two islands just don't meet. So anyway, I'm like very happy about this. I really hope that it's not going to go away when the 22, when the Mars moves out of the 22. But more to come. I'm like I've said before, consciousness is very wild, and you could be in a state of consciousness where you're in suffering and you're in pain for years on end, and the next thing you know, it's like you're out of it and you don't even remember what it was like to be in there. So yeah, maybe that's that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is all consciousness. It makes sense with like the moods and the health and everything.
Well, and even it makes me wonder about like, what our actual control is over the stuff. Like, I mean, obviously we go back to no choice because that's what Ra has said many, many, many times. But like, if I just sat on my bed and didn't do anything and didn't take any supplements and didn't, ate the same meal and just like didn't do anything, if like the transits just like ultimately would shift my state, physically, my health. I'm not really willing to try to find out if that's the case. I'm not going to be the martyr for that one, but it's been something that I've wondered, because you can get the false belief that you're the one that has healed yourself when really it's just like a matter of timing and transits. If that's the case, if it's really just like we're moving through space time, and that point in space time was a point where I'm supposed to be suffering based on the kind of position of everything, and this point in space time I'm not. So I don't know, that's not answering anything. It's just me, I guess, pondering.
But it brings up another theme that I wanted to talk about this episode, which I told you already, but our audience doesn't know about it. Based on this point, I had a realization with like this past week. I've had, I guess, more anxiety than usual, and I associate it likely with the undefined root, trying to get free of the pressure. And Sarah talks about her health experiments with me, her trials and errors to see what works and doesn't work. And it made me think about defined versus undefined spleens. And I go to that particular center as the easiest example, I think, to witness in terms of this theme of like how when we are defined, we have a rigidity to how that center operates within us. And then when it's undefined, it's, so extremely versatile, and it's where we're here to become wise. And I don't mean to say this proclaimer, whatever the word is to say something, proclamation. It's not a proclamation. I want to like say something before I say something else. Proclaim.
Disclaimer.
There we go. Disclaimer. I don't mean to minimize anyone's health issues. I understand like health is a struggle, and I don't mean to make it less serious than you may be experiencing it if you are struggling with health issues out there. So that's my disclaimer, my proclamation of a disclaimer, because I cannot talk. But to generalize, I would say that most people who have health issues seem to be those with undefined spleens. And at least in my own life, the people I've witnessed to try to figure out their health, they become wise about their health, are people with undefined spleens. And that's typically like the book is they don't feel comfortable in their bodies. To have a defined spleen means you're more comfortable in your physical form. And without that, you're always seeking that, and you're not self-mind is always seeking to make yourself feel better, probably by doing things health-wise to bring that sense of safety and security as a flesh person in this Maya that we're existing in. And so many people I know, including Sarah, try different health things. They're constantly trying different health tactics and maneuvers and this and that to find a cure for whatever their ailments are. And in that process, they're becoming wise about the different ailments and what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Like, just like Sarah was saying, but how much of that is transits and how much of it is actually learning what the body needs? I don't know. But I compare it to myself as someone who has a defined spleen. It's not to say that my health is like 100% perfect. No, but when I have issues, the spleen has like this secureness inside of it to figure out what's wrong and to know what to do intuitively, specifically for my form, my body, to figure out the issue, and come to some sort of resolution conclusion. And it's a journey, more of a struggle. I use the term struggle loosely because I don't mean it to be a struggle, but it is
for me because I have the 38.
but yeah, not everyone has a 28 or 38. But
Right.
Another term I was thinking is like a coping mechanism, but I don't like the insinuation that has, so I don't want to use that phrase. But I can't think of a better phrase. But I was thinking about myself with my undefined root versus my other undefined centers, and how I don't have good coping mechanisms for stress. When I feel stress, it just eats at me and it haunts me, and I just want to get free of the pressure, and I don't know what to do about it. And I haven't become wise. Like, I have not experimented with it recently. I mean, I used to have different things that I would do and it would help, but those concepts no longer resonate with me. So I haven't been doing them, like Kundalini yoga, Reiki, I don't know, crystals, like the things that I would do, like would help, but they no longer resonate with my identity. And so with my open G center, and so I don't do them anymore. And as of now, like, I don't have great coping mechanisms for stress. And so when my root center does amplify pressure, it does not know what to do with it. And so my not self mind is going to do mental gymnastics to try to get free of the pressure, but without having a strategic plan of attack, which I feel like I need. But again, with being a non-strategic person, I don't know how correct that is. But I compare that to the other centers, like the solar plexus. I have figured out maneuvers for myself to cope with emotions, whether that is amplifying someone's emotions in the moment, or that is realizing the accumulation of emotions in my body that aren't necessarily mine, but I hold on to, ways to release that. And like, that has been okay. Or a lot of us have an undefined ego center, heart center. And that has been like the mental gymnastics of realizing you don't have to prove your worth, and you're going to constantly feel like you have to prove your worth, but knowing that in the back of your head is usually enough. Like, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to make promises. And those are the coping mechanisms we have for the heart center or the G center. What Sarah said last episode of, like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just simply with the wrong people in the wrong place. And you have to cope with it for whatever time that you have to endure it until it changes. But anyways, I was reflecting on myself and my open root and how I don't have great strategies for dealing with stress. And Sarah had something to say also. Well, I'm going to call you out now, but about the head center versus root center in terms of dealing with pressure. But yeah, it's just that realization, like, we're here to be wise. And part of being wise is trying out or being called out, say you're a line 2, or investigating, say you're a line 1, or whatever lines you have within your profile, whatever roles you identify with, to discover the wisdom that is there for you as your individual self, in your journey through life, to figure out how your not self mind is going to deal with the things that it's here to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a bit hectic. I hear background noises around me and they distract me, and then I can't focus on the words I'm saying because my mind is concentrating on the noises and not on the words I'm saying. So I don't know what
Well,
I'm saying, and then it's wild.
and
The
I appreciate your explanation, but it always sounds very coherent to me, even when you like after you say stuff, you're like, I don't know what I just said.
but sometimes I can think about what I'm saying as I'm saying it, and I'm like aware of what I'm saying. But right now, like my actual concentration was going on the noises around me, and so it's difficult to put words together. I just had to like laissez-faire, let my voice just talk
I
without being
know.
aware of words it was using.
Talk about surrendering to the form. No, I mean, there was a bunch of different things that that brought out of me, and now I can't remember any of them. Just kidding. Just to speak on the head and the root center first of all, and also I want to actually, before I go there, I want to talk about how like understanding the tension that is necessary within your body is such an important thing, because it's not that, my not self is a very egoic, very high willpower type of thing, right? It thinks it is, right? That's what it thinks, that it gets things done by applying will to it, which is funny because I have a completely open ego. But it doesn't mean that, when I am looking at my life, that I just don't do anything because I don't have any will, period. Right? There are moments where I can apply will, and there's moments when I can't. And trying to force something that is not correct is super damaging to my physicality. And so it's like understanding the balance of the right amount of tension when you're trying to create that wisdom that's supposed to come out of the lack of definition. And it's like, while we're still very mental, I was saying, like, I'm still basically like 70% of my life is living in my mind, and I notice when I get sucked totally into it. And I notice when I have these like brief moments of reprieve when I'm outside of it. But for the most part, like, I still am a very mental person. And while I am very mental still, I have to consider the tension that's going on, instead of just kind of surrendering and allowing, which sounds great. It just, I don't have access to that at this stage in the game, at least not consistently. It's like a moment to moment thing, having the awareness, having the surrender or not. And so, when I was changing myself in the past, right? Like for me, it is a splenic thing. When I was changing things health wise in the past, I was applying it, or I was doing it in such a way that wasn't leading to any positive outcomes, because I wasn't doing it in a way that could create a sustainable like change of behavior over time, because I thought that I had the willpower to do something that was just not available to me consistently. And so like the little changes, the subtle changes that you can enact in ways that create like a healthy tension within yourself. It's something that only you, and when I say you, I mean Laura, but I mean everyone individually, can measure whether or not, you are allowing yourself to spin out into your not self mind because of the root pressure, or you don't really have any control over enacting real positive habits to combat the anxiety that you're coming into contact with. And so it's like, it's a very baby step kind of thing, but again, it's not like a tensionless experience, because you're in tension in the anxiety, and you're in tension when you're trying to combat the anxiety. And so it's like, how do we figure out what the right kind of tension is a really interesting question. And it's one that each person has to experiment with on their own to find out what's correct for them, because it's not going to be one size fits all. Just like before, when I was just blindly, when I used to have skin problems and I would just put like fucking honey and turmeric all over my face, but I was still smoking cigarettes. It's like there were some mismatches of like my understanding of how to heal myself and my understanding of what was causing it and all kinds of stuff. My mind was like, this will work. You know, it was very much that story that Ra always talks about when he says about the guy whose mind keeps telling him to move to Las Vegas and put like all of his money on Red 51 or whatever. And finally the guy does it. He goes to Vegas, he quits his job, he puts all of his money and he loses all of the money. And then the mind is like, okay, let's do the next thing now. And he just follows the mind again, even though it literally just he just lost his life savings because of what it told him. Like, we don't remember that the mind is just not very reliable, and it doesn't necessarily lead to positive outcomes for us when we try to apply its dictates into our physical bodies and just the kind of structure of our lives generally. So it's an important, just again, understanding to have about the tension that's required for change, but also that like trying to force the river is also not going to change the situation. So it's, again, not me arguing for non-action, but it's something that, you know, is worth contemplating for everyone. And then on the head versus the root pressure, you know, I was having this realization because I do not have root pressure. I mean, I have a defined root, so I have a consistent kind of pressure that exists within my body. In that way, that physical kind of adrenalized emotional pressure that I have, that I can consistently find. And then versus the mental pressure that I have, which Lora has a defined head, whereas I have an open head. And it's interesting because I see it with her, and it's like funny because we've been friends for many years now, well, 3 years now. And it's taken me a while to like really wrap my head around it, because this is also just to say, like, understanding the different layers of the conditioning and the different centers, and understanding how even to like where and when to apply the right kind of pressure to the ruptures that we have from our not self, it's a whole like just life's work in and of itself. But what I've noticed with these two centers is that, so for Lora, it's like when somebody asks her to do something, and I have people in my life that have open roots too, it's like kind of like there's an immediate physical pressure, a physical anxiety that comes over that you need to get something done. Whereas for me, it's like if somebody asks me to do something, I might get a little anxiety. In fact, it might annoy me, but like I am not forcing my physical body to do it in a kind of in any speed other than the speed of my own. So it may, again, like I may have some anxiety, but like I'm not going to move faster than I'm going to move. And that means, like, I was talking to Laura about how my uncle, I woke up one day, I had just gotten, it was just first day of my cycle. I was not in the mood to be crawling underneath the sink, and my uncle wanted me to look under there because there was something that was under there that I needed to like change a battery on, whatever. And when he asked me, I was just like, I'm not going to do that right now. Like, I'll do that a little bit later. And, you know, I felt bad about it for a second, but then I realized that like the reason that I could say that was because I have a defined root. You know, the reason that it was easy for me, at least, or the naturalness to which I could say that, was because of my defined root. Now, on the other hand, because I have an open head, when they ask me technological questions, Google questions, research questions, you know, anything like that, like I feel an immediate pressure to answer. I don't feel like I have the space to say no. I don't feel like I have the excuse to say no. You know, I don't feel like none of it. And I feel annoyed at the fact that I'm not saying no, but I'm doing the thing. I'm looking for the thing. I'm searching for the thing because I can't deal with the mental pressure. You know, so I'm like, oh, like, I don't want to do this, like, fuck this. And then I'm like searching online for how to answer the question, you know. And Laura has a little bit more of like a stop, you know. There's if I ask her questions, and she doesn't have the, again, it's similar to my root, and it's like not time for her to answer them. She doesn't have a problem pausing it. Whether or not it annoys her, probably does to some extent, but like she doesn't feel the need to immediately respond like she might if somebody was asking her to physically manipulate something. Laura, did I sum that up, or do you want to add anything?
And well, I can add my own experiences, but you summarized it well. Okay. The last comment you just said made me think of my dad. Like, my dad's probably the person who will most pressurize me in terms of my head. Because he will want an answer right away because he has emotional definition and doesn't want to actually wait things out as the non-self emo people do. And so he'll like ride me and be like next to me, asking me things, like waiting for me to do the research to figure something out. Whereas, yeah, like with you or with my mom, like if I don't care about like something, I'm not gonna try to research it. I think that's also partially like I'm single definition, so my spleen is connected to my head center, and my spleen has, well, it's my throat center, but there's the Grange. It's the 16.5, the refusal to share an enthusiasm. I can't say that quickly. But if something doesn't cause me enthusiasm, like if I don't find it interesting, I'm not gonna look it up. And like Sarah's like sent me stuff to pay attention to within the human design community, like Facebook posts, this, that, and I'm just like, nope, not gonna look at this, not gonna look at that, and I just don't care. Which I feel like is also a bit of an individual circuitry type of thing, of like individualism is very closed off because it has to go through mutation internally, and it's very selective about what it interacts with in the outside world. Not that I'm individually defined, but I feel like, I mean, I have 61 also within my defined head, so maybe to a certain extent, and 43. But if my mom asks me, like my mother will just like say like, Laura, we have to do this. Laura, we have to do that. And first off, it irritates me that she's using the plural we. I mean, she has tribal energy, tribal circuitry though. So for her, like there's a lot of we in how she identifies our family unit. And so that just like, oh, it gets under my skin and it just feels so wrong, but I haven't corrected her. I just endure it. But she'll like lump us into this group of a family unit of a penta and be like, we have to do this, we have to do that. And just to like be aware, like for her, it's simple. Like she has the tribal circuitry. It's the 5432, which I compromised to because I just have the 54. And so she's just spontaniquely aware of what needs to get done, like what is constructive. Sorry, my dog's barking and it's distracting me, of course, because there's a bunch of noises today. But she's just aware of what has to happen. And so she feels that pressure and she wants to make a list about it so that she can tackle it when she has the time and energy to tackle it. But just the fact that that list exists drives me crazy. Like I just get so much anxiety about it, which is not fun. But going back to the previous statements you were saying, it made me reflect on like how much of a not self strategy it is for myself to say I don't have a coping mechanism for stress. I have to do something about it. I'm looking for direction. I am trying to figure out how to use my willpower to change my reality. It's just complete like, hello, here I am in my not self ways. To try to think that there's something that needs to get done.
Well,
and going back to what you were saying with transits and the spleen, well, what happen if we just wait? Will the body resolve its own health issues if we just wait for the transits to change? With the root center, sometimes that's how it goes. And I think that's probably why me, with other undefined root people included, procrastinate, because the pressure will fluctuate in and out. It's not constant, but there are times when the neutrinos come in and they overwhelm you, and then you feel that excess burst of pressure and anxiety that something needs to get done right now and isn't actually, and then it just makes you feel horrible. And then eventually that feeling phases out and it fades, and then you feel okay, and then you just wait until the very last moment to do the thing that needs to get done because that's somehow the most ideal time to do it, the very, very last possible moment. Though I know like some defined root people also procrastinate, my father included. He like will not pay anything on time. He is the king of late fees. ironically. But yeah, yeah, transits. I think sometimes you just have to wait out the transits and the root will resolve itself. But again, about like Ra would say, do without doing and everything gets done. Eventually, because of procrastination, things do get done, but there's still the doing that gets done. The task doesn't disappear. Like the payment that has to be made doesn't disappear. But with the spleen, the health still needs to be resolved. The health issue isn't probably going to go away on its own logically. Thinking, gosh, my dog. I don't think you can. I think like my mic is set to voice isolation, so you cannot hear her screaming her little lungs out. But she's
No.
excited to eat. It's just so distracting. Sorry.
It's okay. I mean, thanks for putting on the voice thing, because that's that's good for us, not necessarily for you. But there's a bunch of different things. One, on the one hand, like under like my thing with the not needing to, the not self strategy of not wanting to deal with the pressure. It's like, yeah, but if you don't figure out healthy ways of dealing with it, then you're just going to be a slave to everyone else's conditioning of your root.
Yeah.
And if they are not self, then you're basically just a slave to other people's not self dictates. And that's what I see with a lot of different people in my life that upsets me. It's like, well, I, as someone who cares, who understands not self, wants people to not feel pressured in undue ways, get put to the back of the line if I'm asking questions or if I'm requesting things, because they are getting driven around by whatever not self open centers that they have. And so they're more concerned with doing something out of their openness than they are at addressing something that I said that maybe they would rather do, but they're so pressurized by what they're not that they don't even pay attention to it. And I do that too. And it, I see it when I do it, when I'm like answering something because I have anxiety over it, as opposed to talking to a friend in kind of just like a relaxing way because I want to get rid of the pressure, right? So it's like, I think that it's important to not necessarily like you're ever going to get rid of the pressure, but not be driven by it to act out or to allow your mind to get you to do things, physically do things when it's not correct for you. I mean, no choice, right? But there's there's still something to be said about people just blindly being kind of dragged around by the dictates of their not self centers, especially physically, because that physical anxiety is a bitch. So, and I see it, like I said, I see it with a bunch of different people. So it's not like really I see it with you because I'm not with you physically. But in person with people that I know, I see it. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like when you're not learning how to, or you're not gaining some kind of stop some kind of pressure or something that like mitigates the pressure that you're experiencing, you're just going to be driven by it. But maybe that's just what happens until the pressure becomes too much and you finally just are like, fuck this, I'm not doing it anymore. So I don't know. I mean, everyone's unique and everybody's experience is unique. But also I do relate to your dad because I am defined root and I procrastinate AF. I'm like a very serious procrastinator. So I feel like with me, it's like I'll sit with the pressure that's like building, but like I'll just sit with it as opposed to like it coming in all at once.
Yeah. I wanted to say something and I already forgot what it was. I don't think I act with the pressure. Like if I feel it just makes me feel horrible. But like you said, like there's always going to be pressure. I'm always going to amplify it. I can never evade that because that is my destiny in this form with my open root. The open root wants to be free of the pressure so that it can feel that moment, aha, there's no more pressure. But something's always going to come up around the corner to add more pressure to the table, and we're always going to amplify it. So there is no freedom. We're seeking freedom, but there is no freedom. But yeah, coping mechanisms for dealing with it. is important. But yeah, I don't think I act when the fire is flaming. Um, I tend to feel better when I do things when I'm in a relaxed state. And waiting to the last moment, sometimes it creates like the pressurized fire to do something. And sometimes I can wait until the last minute and I'm calm as I'm doing it. Again, it's just neutrinos. Whatever neutrinos are going through my crystals or what dictate how the mood is set. But yeah, I try not to act. Well, again, I feel like that's a strategic statement. I don't know if I try to do it. I don't like acting when I'm in an anxious state just because it does not feel good. And I'd
Yeah.
rather distract myself and then do the task that needs to get done when my body just does it without my mind being like, you have to do this, you have to do this. I just, again, do without doing and it'll get done. So it's just waiting for the body to move without the mind saying, do this thing. It's just when the body chooses to do the thing. But yeah, it's not fun.
Well, it's so hard to discern too when the anxiety's in the body, you know? Like, I mean, I don't have an open root, but I would just imagine that, like, for me with the open head, I can very much see myself getting caught in it, you know, because it's very mental. But like with the open root, it's like your physicality is feeling the pressure, the anxiety, you know? So it's just, you know, it takes a lot of discernment.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's different for sacral people who have a way of having energy and knowing when their body wants to do something versus when it doesn't. Whereas being a projector, we're not here to do things. I mean, like you have to do things, but we're not here to operate in that circle way. And so that root center has a very different way in which it operates because it's not root to sacral energy. It's either root to spleen or root to solar plexus. And it's going to manifest in different ways. Literally,
Yeah.
haha, getting to the throat, literally manifest.
Our little funny human design quips. Yeah, no, I mean, agreed. And there was like a bunch of different things that I want to talk about, but one of the things that this conversation just reminded me of was the fact that like this is an emotionally manifesting conversation because of the 22. Because the 22 being activated, and like, not to say that we've never had one from this podcast before, but it's just interesting to notice. And I wonder if it's going to sound differently, like, because we have that emotional activation. I don't know. You guys can...
Oh no, just kidding. I mean, well, for a long time no, just kidding. I was thinking, well, my brain. I was like, we had the 35, 36, but we didn't.
No, we just had the 36.
We didn't.
Me over here just with the 36, wishing that I had the 35, pretending like I have the 35. But not actually. No, I get. And I mean, it's interesting too, because this emotional manifestation energy, like something, well, actually, Laura, do you want to say anything else about that? Because I'm about to go on a tangent.
No, go on your tangent. I'll listen.
Okay. But this emotional manifesting energy, I think, has been the kind of crux of my like immediate state, because like over the past few days, I've been like very irritable, specifically. Like, I think I was saying to Laura the offline that for me, like the not self claws that are like the deepest in me are the open G center and the open ego still. Like, I'm fairly aware of my not self spleen stuff and in its, you know, capacity to make me hold on to things that aren't good for me. I have done a lot of work around it. I used to be a smoker. I mean, there's been many, many things that I was holding on to that were not good for me that I let go of. And not to say that I did it out of force, but like, you know, that was kind of, I feel like the first layer of the deconditioning onion for me was the not self spleen stuff. And they're all connected. It's not like you can really piece them apart, but like the things that still drive my behavior to this day are the not self ego and the not self G. And it's funny because the ego has been hierarchically defined as the number one kind of not self conditioner, not self conditioning force, at least within the realm of PHS. or I'm sorry, not PHS, rave psychology. But for me, I feel like it's the G center, the searching for love and identity is like the primary driver. And maybe that is because I'm split. And so there is such a pressure on like finding something to bridge my split that it goes, the split feeds into the G center, which then feeds into my open ego. And I'm kind of like separating things that can't really be separate because I'm one individual that has a lot of stuff going on internally. But just the way that like I conceive of what's happening internally with me is that it goes, I'm either looking for love and direction, or I found someone who I feel like is the person that I'm looking for love and direction with. And then I feel like I need to prove myself with my not self ego to them. And then, and then that's kind of like the pattern that I've found myself in. And, this is going to be a little bit vulnerable, but then, the past year was really rough for me, not just this year, but like kind of the end of 2022 all the way up until the end of 2023. And it was because I was like in the midst of like a deeply like not self-driven predicament with another person. And I was really good like for a while about the whole situation. And I wonder if it's the 22, but like it was like I had like an inflammation of like all of that stuff come back up, of like me feeling like I'm looking for like love and identity. I was feeling really bored. I guess that's probably what started it. And I know that deconditioning can be a boring as fuck thing to do. It's like you're just going to be bored to tears at times when you're doing this, because you're not out there chasing what it is you're not, and you also are not what you're meant. You're not what you truly are either. And so there's just this like interregnum of time where there's nothing going on. And so there's the boredom and, the kind of, I had come in, I guess what I would say, come to terms with the whole situation of it just being like a whole not self nonsense kind of thing. And then I saw like the just absolute chemistry of my body react in all of the ways that it had used to act to something. And then basically between my not self ego and then the 12.3, which is like self-hatred, basically personified, there was just this like, what's wrong with you kind of thing, just like pulling myself apart and thinking that there was something wrong with me because like the situation didn't work out. And it's just like a very humbling reminder that as much as I've been doing all of this work, it's like my not self mind will come in there and be like the most vicious thing that I've ever seen, start like pulling me apart and start thinking that the only way that I'm going to be okay is if like I get love from an external source, And I just wanted to share that because that's really what's going on with me. Like I really love and appreciate the peace that I get when I'm not thinking about someone else, but I've spent so much of my life thinking about being with someone, whomever. Like it's like it doesn't even matter who the who is. It's just like a pattern inside of me that I'm trying to, I mean, I don't think I'm going to dislodge it, but I can like, I think the volume on it is going to go down. And so seeing it come up, and so like, and I've talked to Lora about it multiple, I mean, she's put up with a lot of shit, you guys, to be honest. But like, it's just, I'm like seeing it for what it is and realizing how easy it is for me to identify with it. And then kind of my entire experiment be damned, just like act out in ways that are against my emotional authority and towards my undefined, my lack of definition, the places where I'm not defined, like behaving in my not self-conditioning so easily, it's not even like it's that hard. It's like it takes a click of a finger sometimes. So I wonder if that's also just like the inflammation of the emotions that I've had, just kind of being able to like peak up because Mars is activating it and connecting my throat to my emotionality. And so now I can actually speak about it. I'm glad for it to go back to dormant or just gone, whatever the thing is, because something that Alok had said to me, Alok, who is a 1-3 emotional manifester, triple split definition, was that it took him 21 years to get to the bottom of his own addiction to toxic love. And what I realized is that like so much of what he means by toxic love is the fact that like the not self will never love itself. And so it has to seek love externally outside of itself. And so it is perpetually seeking it. It's like a very also dopamine rich kind of activity, because there's this kind of seeking and chasing and like going after something, hunting after something that you can't obtain. So you keep like getting into situations where you get a lot of dopamine, but like you actually never get to the place where you actually experience like fulfilling love. And so, you know, it made me think about a lot, because it's like the addiction to toxic love is like this not self tendency to chase after or expect or think that if we could go into someone else's life or be a part of someone else's life, then we would be fulfilled. But it's like it's never going to be that. It's only when we feel like when we're beyond comparison and we love ourselves, single, in a relationship, or otherwise, that we're actually going to be able to have the kind of self-love that we're chasing after anyway. But it may not have all of the dopamine hits and weird cascade of adrenaline and stress related hormones that are going off, you know. So it's a real like fantastical addiction to kind of break. And so it's no wonder that it took him 21 years. And I'm like, please God, I don't want 21 years, but I can see it very clearly now. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with any of our listeners who are in that kind of not self love, addicted to the chase, kind of, you know, just cyclical and unending and unfulfilling situations. But yeah, Laura, do you want to do you want to touch anything there?
Yeah. Well, first, you started saying how you feel more like you're not self. Highest point of pain is that G center. And I feel the same way. And I don't know if that's because we've started conditioning so we're aware of the ego center. Maybe it's more like for all the muggles out there who are unaware of themselves, the ego center is most likely to influence us. But yeah, I feel like since I started deconditioning, I mean, like the root is not fun, but another big point is that G center and the things my non-self mind says to itself, thinking it should do XYZ, is like all of it comes from the G center. But then all of it has to, because it's, again, like you said, you can't separate the non-self into bits and pieces. It's, you know, multiple facets of like one complex structure. Um, but yeah, like I often tell myself like things of just like, you should go to this place because you might meet your future spouse there. You should do this because you might meet your future spouse there. So it's not as like, it's different. I'm not chasing things from the emotional standpoint, which I think is a big differentiating factor. But my G center is still constantly looking for love and thinks that it's only going to find it in that external relationship that it hasn't had in what feels like centuries. But yeah, I was thinking about love. As you know, I read romance books, and Sarah's rolling her eyes at this point. But something I told Sarah was, okay, I go through authors, and I'm currently on an author, and I think she's my favorite because I mean, she does plot and character development well, but she explores different ways that people experience love. It's not like every single book within her series has the same sort of, these are how we value and esteem love, and this is what love means, and therefore this is how this relationship is defined. And it made me curious to go back and read Ra's love book to see, like, okay, how did Ra describe the different gates of love, to be able to pinpoint the different facets and the different mechanics of love that are showing up in these fictitious relationships. But For the most part, like when you look at the sexuality gates, those are in the solar plexus. And I mean, they connect from the root to the solar plexus to the throat and also the sacral. And Sarah's sun is in, well, her earth is in gate 6. And that is the solar plexus gate of entering into relationships. It just like makes sense that that is like your identity and your role here, your incarnation cross purpose is to um look at what relationships are correct or incorrect to enter into. And like I have 59, but it's 59.2 and it's unconscious. And like 59.2 is shyness, boldness. It's mechanical shyness. It's not like I'm shy, but for whatever reason, my body, because it's on my design side, protects itself wholeheartedly from any sort of potential relationship. It's just like saying no, no, no to all the 6s out there and is extremely selective about
Except for
who may or may
me.
not call it out. What? Except but it's not romantic. It's not a sexual relationship between
I
people that
know.
might relate in generative processes. But like no, that 59.2 is extremely selective. Um, and like it doesn't even give me the chance for my mind to, get hung up on things because like there's no potentiality with that 59.2. And anyways, but yes, like Sarah was talking about the chase, and I feel like that chase exists in that solar plexus side. The chase from the root to the solar plexus to the throat, and from the solar plexus to the sacral. And it's different being splenic, I think. But for the G center and like that sense of love and direction that we so desperately crave, like I strongly resonate to that part of your story. And can wholeheartedly say, like, my not self has said some ridiculous things to me about what it should or shouldn't do based on the potentiality of possibly maybe like an itty bitty bit finding love somewhere, which it won't. It won't, because love only exists within the self. And everything that we see in the world around us about love in communion with another or through another it's just mechanics. Again, it's just transits, it's just mechanics. I have 0 love gates. I have very, very small chances mechanically for love. Not to say that it won't ever happen, but it's just like not what I'm here for. And as a consequence, of course, my not self mind is going to hyperfixate on all those things, thinking that that's exactly what it's here for. And lo and behold, nope, it indeed isn't. But yeah, I think valuable stuff you shared, Sarah, and you're not
Thanks.
alone. Regardless of our differences, you are not alone. I may not be chasing after things or have opportunities to chase things, but yeah, I resonate with the G Center a lot. So here we go.
The G center struggle. Yeah, it's real. Well, and it's for me too, it's interesting looking at it from the two different sides because Laura doesn't have the root or the emotional center and I don't have the spleen. It's like the way that it shows up is so differently for us because because I have that split that is a manifesting split between one of my bridge gates being the 35 and one of them being the 22. It's like I am so tempted to try and manifest love in a very physically, like in a very physical way, like chasing, like Laura was saying, whereas Laura doesn't necessarily have those tendencies and she doesn't have the tendency to hold on to what's not good for her because she has a defined spleen. Like the way that she, I guess you could say, I don't want to say perseverates, but like, that kind of vibe on things that her not self G is interested in is just different than the way that but they're, it's all not self G. It can kind of fall under that umbrella. And it's interesting too when you were talking about the 6. For one, I forgot that your 59 was unconscious, but it's also not your design sun or earth. And the 6 for me is my personality earth, and so it is so consciously, like I am so consciously aware of it. But what I have noticed is it's for me it really isn't just about romantic relationships, because 2 of the most important people within my week to week life, Laura being one of them and Steffi being one of them, the person that I work closely with, and actually Amy too, who I talk to pretty regularly, all have the 59. And so it's like there is this quality of like me still within my relationships. It's like there's an importance to relationships for me, romantic or otherwise, and they're still generative in a sense, even if they're not sexually generative. But my not self still wants what it wants, which is something that I was listening to a Locke, and he was talking about the gates and harmony and polarity. Fucking fascinating conversation just in general, because he's talking about how the gates are always interested in their polarity, right? They're interested in what's on the other side of the gate. So if you have a hanging gate, you're interested in what's on the other side of it. But really, if you're looking for balance, you need to be looking at, the gates are looking for the harmony. So they're looking at what's on the other side of the gate. But what you're really needing is balance, which is the polarity, which is the gate that's on the other side of the wheel. And now I understand sometimes those are the same things for specific gates, like the 4323, the 4037, and I think the 3420. But nonetheless, it was just a really interesting conversation generally. And one of the gates that he was talking about was the 60th gate. And the 60th gate is all about limitation. It's a format energy. And basically, like, with 60th gate understands that like there's limitations to things, and I have possibility perspective. But like the 60th gate is all about like the probability, of like limitation being somewhere. It's very just hyper aware of the fact that certain things are impossible to do. And, that there is certain things that are absolutely impossible. And I don't want to say that that's the case about romance, but like we've talked about this on past podcast episodes, like looking at the great out there of the program crumbling and the 7-centered model and left-minded reality, strategic reality crumbling, like the way that we've understood romance and been raised to participate in romance is certainly crumbling too. And so it feels like, I don't want to say that my expectations for the type of partner that I want has gone up, but it's more like, I'm not going to get into not self relationships anymore. And that's also part of this like deep boredom that I'm in, because my not self, if I was not in a deconditioning state right now, I would be jumping into a relationship with some random dude that probably had a defined spleen and was no good for me. As like the first, whomever that I could find, that was what I was doing before human design. And so as a split definition person with 36-6 as my personality, Sun Earth, like not being in a relationship, it's a very, like the first like layer of it was me just like getting over the hump of just needing like the splenic need of like needing to feel good. And so like not having someone to make me feel good in any given moment. But then now it's like, oh shit, like the probability of finding someone that's out there, my 60th gate, it's like I'm just seeing limitation right now because there is, again, it's going to be a very small percentage of people that are living correctly as themselves. And so I would be entering into something that is not correct if I was entering into anything in the immediate future. And so kind of like my potentiality for romance is just like flushed down the toilet. And yet you're talking to someone who's not self-mind, has spent the majority of my life obsessing, hyperfixating, perseverating on whatever romantic interest that was currently on my docket. And so this is just like, I'm going through a lot of, I guess what you could say, it's like withdrawing, like there's like withdrawals. And there's periods of time where I'm like, I have like, my life is so boring. I don't know what I'm doing. I get so sick and disgusted with myself. And then there's periods of time where I go back down the rabbit hole of someone that I was with in the past and like wanting to have them back or wanting to see them or thinking about them or whatever. And it's like there's like moments of, again, reprieve in the middle where I'm like, okay, like we're good. We're good on our own. We're a bad bitch. Like things are going to be fine. Like we're deconditioning. We're going to become uniquely ourselves. We're not going to need anybody. Okay. So we don't have to be freaking out about this. But like those moments are few and far between, considering just like, you know, the nature of who it is that, you know, my not self has been, and who it is that I'm turning into. It's like, it's hard. It's hard to not feel really like it's, because I don't want to say to you, Laura, when you say, oh, I'm probably, you know, I don't have any love gates. Well, like, first of all, you have the harmonics to love gates. So that's not nothing. But also, I don't want to further compel your not self to think that it's important to be in a relationship, because like ultimately it's not. Like it's important to have relationships with people. You know, we're not an island unto ourselves, but like I don't want to hyper fixate on the importance of relationship, because like at the end of the day, it's all fantasy until we actually are living it, right? And that's not really helpful. So I am very much I don't know. I guess I'm very much like I don't want to say it's not nihilism, because I still see that there's possibility, but there's a realism, there's a healthy realism that I've come into contact with that has humbled me about the vanity of my not self, and realizing that even through this whole deconditioning process, I've been like kind of saying in the back of my head, like, well, it's fine because you'll find who you're meant to be with. It's like, bitch, maybe you won't. Like, maybe you won't, and that's okay. Like, maybe just being you is going to be enough. So that's the end of my ramble.
I'll just say, whenever Spirit mentions to me about this deep boredom, I tell her to read a romance book. Has she listened? No, she has not. Maybe you'll solve all your answers.
I know. Well, it's funny, dude. Like, Steph was laughing at us because she's like, she was listening to one of our episodes, and she was like, Laura and Sarah, I don't know who said it, but one of you was like, other in person yet. Our bodies might not like each other. And she was laughing at it because it's like, it's so just curt and like just, you know, unfiltered of us to say that. But, you know,
it's true.
because it is true. It is true. I'm not saying that it's not true, or else we wouldn't have said it. But then it's also like, you know, Laura, I send Laura stuff. Laura's just like, nah. Like, and then Laura sends me stuff like romance novels, and I'm like, nah. And it's like people would take that really personally if they weren't into human design. But like, luckily, you know, when it's correct for me, I will do it. You know, when it's correct for me, I know I will.
I keep giving nudges to your emotional authority, and maybe one day you'll have clarity about it. It'll be correct.
My thing
maybe not.
Is if I had the hard copy like next to me, I would start reading it tonight. But I hate digital, and I don't feel like waiting for it at the library. So that's like where, and I don't feel like spending money on it either. But it's not like I'm against it. You know, it's like the stars haven't lined up correctly for it. But I don't take, you know, it's like, I know you don't take it personal, but it would be, it's funny because me and Laura share a specific understanding about each other where I don't think that we take things as personally as maybe other friends might.
Yeah, which is a grace. So
yeah,
we're grateful for each other.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's the boredom, it just hit me like I had been I told Laura, this is so ridiculous, but I was playing this township game for a while and like listening to Raw and like basically just like with my hands, because I have a body that needs to be moving while I'm consuming information. At least that's how it feels. I know that I'm calm, determination. So I am calm when I eat, but when I am listening to audios and things like that, I need to be doing something with my hands. And this little game was like helping me. And then I was like, wow, this is such a waste of life. Like I just lost interest in it. And then also I haven't really been able to like absorb raw at the same rate. So you know, when like two things just stop and you're not able to access them anymore, you're like, fuck, what do I do now? You know, which is basically where you find me on this particular day on this particular podcast.
But I think that speaks to satisfaction for the sacral center and dopamine addiction, because it's you want that satisfaction in your sacral center and it's not getting it from whatever it is that you're doing for whatever reason. Like I've been there. Sometimes I read a book and it's just not hitting the spot, and so I can't read it. Or I'm playing a game. I play June's Journey. I just started and I really enjoy it. So go play June's Journey. This is not sponsored, but there you go.
Maybe
I know like they have a lot of sponsors out on the internet. But sometimes things just like don't hit that satisfaction spot and it's not bringing in the dopamine, and then you just don't know what to do with yourself. So
exactly.
it's just part of being human, learning to live with boredom.
I know. Well, and it's also like, and then there's these moments where I'm like, okay, I have to do a dopamine detox, and then I just like leave all like dopamine things behind for a few days and I feel better. But you know, it's like I feel as though if we are given the grace of being able to mutate and become who it is that we are and like live out our cross, none of this stuff is going to matter. Like like all of this kind of deconditioning time is not going to matter, and the things that we were doing in it may not matter. And it's not to say that we're going to be on like some grand adventure, but I think we're going to be more present in whatever it is that our lives are. And we're going to be playing the role of our cross, doing whatever that is. So I don't know, maybe that's me idealizing something. I can't tell, I can't say yet, but I think that, you know, these are kind of the things that I'm finding, these like little things like the games, and just to like kind of get through the boredom without going out in the world and trying to manifest or generate anymore. You know, trying to like fix my life or trying to make my life something or trying to go out and get a job or, you know, start grinding or, you know, do the things that my past self has always historically done prior to the last 3 years. So it's like trying to find out how to be bored and decondition without like allowing the not self mind to hijack your body and you go out and like start doing things that aren't correct for you. So I'm like, this might be not correct, right? Like in a small way, but it's better than entering into the wrong relationship or the wrong fucking job or buying a house somewhere that I don't belong or wasn't invited, you know? And, you know, that's why. And so like this, again, this is just real. Like this is just real. Like I wonder about all of the projectors who are on Facebook, who are like on Facebook all the time. Like that's a dopamine thing. You know, like I imagine that when they're completely deconditioned and they are too, potentially, if they've mutated and individuated and deconditioned to the point where they're living out their cross, and they're probably not gonna be on Facebook that much, you know? I don't know. Maybe they will.
I'm calling them out if they're listening. No, they're gonna be like,
well, no, I mean, I don't know. Because I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram and I'm on social media all the time. I'm just trying to be real about it.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, is this the life? Like, is this the life, or is this us biding our time while we decondition out of what we're not? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Maybe it just is the life and what it all
I know,
to.
it's also possible.
Yeah, I don't know. Good questions.
This is such a random podcast episode. Oh,
I could make it more random.
Okay, go there, girl.
Well, do you have any other things you want to bring up?
No, I went through my whole romantic saga. I think of the plenty.
To make it more random, I made falafel yesterday. I've never made it before. I like to cook. I'm a wet kitchens person. And I sprouted my chickpeas beforehand before I made them. I'm not a big falafel person in general. I've just had this itch that I wanted to make falafel, and then I looked at recipes and I saw you can sprout your chickpeas, and so I did. And this is a thought I've had before about nutrition and eating seeds in the nutritional community. It is a collective thought now that like you get more reap for your reward if you sprout your seeds, whether that's like sprouted wheat in your pasta or in your bread, or you sprout your seeds before you make something else with them, whatever it is. Like sprouted things are good because it releases enzymes that break down the anti-nutrients. There's just like generally more nutrients, more antioxidants, what have you, all these things in sprouted seeds. And to look at it from the human design side, this is the thought that I had before. It's like, well, what is the personality like imprint date of a seed? And I never found the answer, and Ra didn't have the answer, but it caused me to start looking at architecture of life, because a plant has a body graph and it has, I believe, like a personality crystal. Like there is, when a seed is born, or not a seed is born, when a seed germinates and has life, that means the personality crystal is like in that plant. And it's kind of morbid to think about like the cannibalism side, except, you know, it's not a human, but it's still a personality crystal when whatever it is that you kill, that you're eating and consuming, um, if it's alive, it has a personality crystal that you are saying, haha, like I'm better than you. I get to live and you get to die. My life is more important than yours. But this thing that like there are more nutrients in things that have personality crystals in them versus things that haven't yet come to life. If you look at a seed that has not germinated, it lacks that potential, and in it coming to life and receiving that personality crystal, things are unlocked within it that offer more value to us, which is again a very morbid way of looking at plants. Sorry to all the vegans out there, your plant food is alive, and just like the personality crystal that is in you could have easily incarnated into a plant. For like people that think just animals are alive, no, plants have personality crystals too. Sorry to break it to you. But yeah, and like the answer is that there is not an answer according to the voice of like when that personality crystal enters that plant, because you know, with humans we have our 88-day process, you know, a sperm and an egg meet, and in that process the design crystal is there, and it gets imprinted at certain points in time after that moment of conception. If you have a plant, it produces a seed, and that seed is in the fruit, and eventually that will become independent on its own. Like the fruit will separate from the mother plant. But there is like, so you would think, okay, that's the design. Like if there is a seed, that means that there is a potential for life. The male and female parts of the two plants have come together to create the genetic imprint that will then become a plant in the future. So the design information is there, but there could be an endless amount of time between the design imprint and the personality imprint for a plant. And so there's a big hovering figurative question mark over that process, because Raw didn't receive that information for how it works or when it works. But anyways, I was just thinking about that. Food for thought, literal food for thought. So eating my falafel yesterday, unlocking nutrients by bringing a bunch of chickpea plants to life before I pulverize them in the food processor and kill them all. So yeah, just yeah, if you want to think about things that are completely irrelevant to anything, here's my spine head for you.
Dude, I was like, when you said random, you were like, hold my beer.
I got you covered with my spine head. I have lots of random things in here.
Well, no, but I mean, it is a really interesting line of thought, just generally speaking, like about when it comes in. And also, it's just interesting to think about sprouted food because, you know, there's Ezekiel bread, which I have eaten for a long time because it's supposedly more nutritious because it's sprouted. The grains are sprouted. So I've never thought about it from the human design perspective, but that makes so much sense. And the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking, I was like, wonder what Laura does in the kitchen while she's cooking. Do you just cook and you're not listening to anything? Like you're not listening to an audio, you're just down there in silence, like, you know, pulverizing your chickpeas?
Well, there's other people in the house. Like there's nothing I could listen to. I don't have portable headphones. I don't have headphones. Do I have headphones? I don't even know if I have headphones or earphones. I think I do, but like they'd have to be plugged into a phone. So yeah, I don't really listen to anything when I cook because I'm never home alone, and sometimes I'm home alone, but usually I'm not. So yeah, I just pay attention to whatever it is that I'm cooking.
Just curious.
I
Just
guess like other
curious.
people listen to things when they cook, right?
I mean, it depends. Yeah, sometimes I do, sometimes I do. Again, like I mean, I have people at my place too, so um it's not like if people are there that I'm listening to things, but if I'm alone, I probably will put on something, whether it's music or again like an audio of raw or podcast or whoever it is that I'm downloading information from currently. So I was just curious if you did that too. I was trying to paint a picture in my head about your wet kitchens environment and what it's like in there when you're doing your thing.
I mean, recently I've been reading books, not listening to them, though I told Sarah this about audiobooks. Like the narrators are so specific and you can't listen to everyone because of the frequency of their voice. As we all know, we're sensitive to sound frequencies. Anyways, I found it's just easier to read them than to listen to them. So like sometimes if I'm to a romance book in my kitchen out loud. But if you're doing something like pulverizing chickpeas, that's a loud process, and then you can't hear your book because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
noises are like too loud for you to be able to hear your other things. So yeah, usually it's silent. There's sometimes like again, if I'm listening to an audiobook that I do like the narrator. If I'm gardening and I'm doing the same tedious task in one spot and I'm not moving, then I will have my phone with me and work in the garden with that audiobook. But like if I need to move around from one spot in the garden to the other, that means I'd have to carry my phone with me and carry that sound with me. And if my hands are like covered in dirt, then I won't be doing that. So if I'm stationary, yes. If I'm mobile, then no.
Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Now you know a little bit about what Laura's life is like I do. Well, and like part of the, not even part of the point of this podcast, because there isn't a point, but part of, I guess, everything that I feel like I want more access to from other deconditioning projectors is like what their lives are actually made up of,
Yeah.
not the glory of like a perfect deconditioned projector, but like what's the real deal, what's actually going on. But anyway, I know we've gone all over the place. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on for this episode?
No, those are all my thoughts for this episode. How about
Okay.
you?
I think I had a lot of thoughts starting, and I feel like I don't remember what any of them are now, other than what I've already gone over. So, I mean, I don't really take notes for this anyway. There was one thing that we were talking about that I sent Laura, and then I audioed Laura, so she does know what I'm talking about now. But I
I thought we
think
weren't going to talk about it.
no, I think that I'll probably skip over it for this episode
But
until I think about it a little bit more. What?
I think it's a good topic. I mean, there's a particular person, we don't have to call that person out, but I think that topic is an important topic, especially within like heart center, ego center realms.
Wait, which topic are you talking about?
The coach. What
Oh,
are you thinking of?
oh, I was thinking about the lines, but actually,
Uh,
no, you're right. We can talk about that. There was one thing that, well, actually, you know what? I don't know if I want to talk about that yet. I'm going to check it.
it's fine.
I'm going to check it.
We can
It's
we can
fine.
rain check it. Yeah.
We can rain check it. We can rain check it.
Keep on your
Because
toes, so you have to keep listening to us.
I know these are like the most random cliffhangers. People are like, what is it? What is it though? Yeah, so there's that. And then also next week I want to talk about the lines a little bit more from more of like the mystical perspective, I guess. And then yeah, there were a few other things, but this week has just been fucking weird, dude. And I feel like kind of like an emotional I don't want to say basket case, but, but like something a little bit more mild, but like similar to that. I don't feel like and this is real. This is, live and living color. You're getting us with the transits, with the neutrino ocean as they are, with our bridges getting whatever, or my bridge getting whatever it's getting. And so you're going to just get me how you're going to get me. But I don't feel like I have a lot of access to my brain, surprisingly. So I'm okay with what we discussed this week.
I just, on what you just said, like, I wouldn't necessarily label you as a basket case, but just thinking about you, like, emotional definition, 1-3 Pisces, all those three things scream basket case to me. So
I know.
it still fits. But not to say that you are a basket case, but like when I think of like those labels seem very basket case to me.
I know. Well, and it's funny because like my supposedly my Aquarius moon is supposed to be so logical. That's what everyone told me when I was into astrology, and it's lo and behold the 30.2 in the emotional center.
Yeah.
And I can see how, the 30.2, the one thing that it really does have very logical going for it is not necessarily the gate, but the second line is pragmatic. And so I can see how, like, I'm trying to get some pragmatism into all of this basket caseness, but it is like, there's just a lot of feelings going on at any given time. So it's hard to justify. And actually, one other thing that I do want to say, I was thinking about people who have unconsciously defined emotional systems versus people who have consciously defined emotional systems. And the thing that I realized is that there was this tendency I used to have where I knew that I was being emotional about something, but I would try to make it seem like it was logical. You know what I mean? Like I would be feeling a certain way that I know was based on my wave. Like I was feeling low or I was feeling high, but like I wanted to justify it in a way that was logical so that I could, whatever the thing was, I could feel like I was right. I could argue with someone when I was not in a position to be arguing because I wasn't emotionally clear. The list goes on. And as I've gotten more into human design, I've gotten more into a place where I am no longer like, I know that I'm not logical. I know that it's not logical. And so I'm not trying to be logical. I'm just aware that my emotional system is doing things and I am reluctant to act in any way, shape, form, or fashion where there's an emotional charge until I get to some state of clarity. Now, for people who have unconscious emotional definition, what I've seen actually is them act out in ways that are emotional and then really just think that it is logic, not realize that their behavior is illogical and that it's not justifiable, right, in a logical way. And so I guess that's just me pointing out to everyone, if you have unconscious emotional definition, just be aware of that tendency, because it's harder to have like kind of access to your emotions when it's not conscious. It's not to say it's more fun to have them consciously defined either, because I don't necessarily prefer it, because it's like I'm always aware of my own bullshit, which is really annoying. Like sometimes I wish I could just think that I was right without questioning my emotionality. But I think it's given me a level of wisdom about, how to be emotional, and it's helped me not be a basket case. And there's a level of, I have pause, I think, with people who have unconsciously defined emotional systems now, because I'm like, ooh, I don't know if they really know, and I think that, it takes time to get to know your emotional wave, but this is just something that I've perceived. I don't know if you have anything to say on that, Laura.
Well, I could, but it's theoretical because I'm not an emotionally defined person.
That's
But
fine.
it's so earlier when we started, you said that, the events and like reality around you will affect your wave. And so like you'll relate your wave to something that's happening with the spike in the excitement and then the disappointment or the crash of the wave. Um, And before I knew you, really, and like my theoretical understanding of the wave was that what is happening and the wave are two separate things. Like the wave is a separate mechanical entity, and your body will have a specific chemistry inside of it that will dictate the wave, regardless of like what's happening around you. Therefore, you have to wait for your wave to come to clarity for those like internal chemical reactions to unfold for you to have clarity, because your perceived emotional perspective, how you think you feel about something, might not have anything to do with like the actual chemical wave that's happening inside of you. And then you showed me that it's like yes and no. Like you have that wave, but the wave will change based on what's happening around you, and it can be triggered by people or by things or by events and all this stuff. So it makes me think that maybe people who are unconsciously defined in that emotional wave, it's their passenger that is like the part that's unaware of it, right? Like they're not equating the bridge. Like stuff is happening to them and it's eliciting a response, and they're not aware that they are emotionally reactive to the things that are happening to them, which like makes sense, right? That seems a logical statement, ironically,
Yeah.
since you were saying you weren't logical. But again, before I would think, okay, like these people even less are aware, because like they're not even aware that they have emotions. And yet it's their body that is processing things in an emotional way. And before, again, I would assume like there's no cause and effect causality to the wave, but you have shown me differently. So, anyways, yeah, just my understanding has developed. That's all.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because the fact is that there's the thoughts that we have, like they can begin in the emotional center. That's why the quarter of mutation has, or I'm sorry, the quarter of initiation, which is a mental quarter, has Pisces in it, like, and all of these emotional channels and gates. So there's this quality where like our thoughts and our emotions are like very interlocked, like we can't separate them. But the thing that I'm realizing, right? So like to give an example, let's say I'm talking to someone new, and having a new person in my life gets me really excited, and I'm super excited, and so I say yes to a bunch of things that I have no interest in doing because I'm in a really high point. And then 3 days later, I realize like this person is not the person I want to be with, and my wave crashes, not interested in them anymore. And then I'm a dick to all of the people in my life because I'm in a bad mood and I feel like everyone else is being an a-hole around me, but it's really just that I'm in a bad mood because of what happened. So it's like there's an external circumstance that's creating the wave, but then the things that are happening around me, I am falsely projecting my state onto, right? So like I'm blaming Lora for not answering me fast enough, when I'm in a bad mood, but it's just she's answering me at the same rate she's always answered me. It's just that I'm in a bad mood, right? And so it's like there's that quality of you're in a bad mood and you are blaming the other person for you being in a bad mood that's been caused by something that's completely external to them and has nothing to do with them. But then your mind is creating stories about why this person is an a-hole or why they did something wrong, even though it has everything to do with your chemistry in the moment, right? And so it's like there's this whatever the external the chemistry that's happening in the moment that it's happening is created from an external circumstance, but then everything else that's around you is getting colored by that circumstance too. And so that's where you become someone who looks like an emotional basket case basically, to full circle it. So it's both, it is both. It's like it's not just that there's transits that are coming in that are creating this chemistry in you. It's that there is stuff that's happening in your life that's creating the chemistry, but then you are falsely projecting the chemistry onto other things that are happening in your life while it's happening. And that's where I see the unconscious people get, when they're in a bad mood, being like a dick to someone else because they're in a bad mood and thinking that the other person is just inept in some way, when really they're just in a bad mood because, the guy that they like didn't call them or text them, right? So, I mean, I think it's probably different for everyone, but there's a lot to the emotional system, that's for sure.
It's very complex. Almost like everything, but yeah, it is.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, okay. I think that's my real end. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
That's my real end too.
That's our real end, everybody. We're not gonna rehash anything or circle back. As always, if you like this podcast, if you like this episode, please like us, comment, subscribe. You can follow us on Instagram at Projector Stories. We're on Facebook, the Projector Stories, and YouTube, the Projector Stories Podcast. So yeah, we would love to hear from you all. Lora?
Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye.